The train whistle screamed through the Colorado night, just as Eleanor Whitmore realized she was no longer going home. The mountains stood black against the sky, sharp as broken glass. Snow drifted across the empty platform in Silver Ridge, and the wind cut through her thin wool cloak as if it knew she did not belong there. She stood beside her father's carriage, her gloved hands shaking, staring at the small leather valise at her feet. 2 hours earlier, her sister had run away. Not to another town, not to a friend's house. Run away to marry a ranch hand. And now, Eleanor was here to take her place. Inside the carriage, Senator Harold Whitmore sat stiff and pale, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked as if it might crack. He did not look at her, yet he stared straight ahead, as though the darkness outside the window held the only answer to the ruin pressing down on him. "He is expecting a bride tonight," her father had said, back at the house in Denver. "The agreement is signed. The land rights are secured. If we fail him, Eleanor, the rail line collapses. My career collapses. We lose everything." Her mother had wept softly into her handkerchief, but had not protested. And Eleanor, the quiet daughter who balanced accounts and read law books in secret, had stepped forward when no one else would. "I will go," she had said. She had not said she was terrified. The wind howled again as the carriage door opened. A tall man in a black coat approached from the shadows of the station. He removed his hat in a brief, stiff greeting. "Miss Whitmore," he said. "I am Mr. Grayson. His Grace is waiting." His Grace. The words still felt unreal. Officially, the man she was to marry was Jonathan Blackwood, a wealthy landowner from the Northern Territories, a powerful figure whose support could make or break political power in the West. The newspapers called him the Iron Duke of the Rockies, though America had no true dukes. It was a nickname, a legend, a warning. They said he had fought in private wars along the border, that he had come back scarred and changed, that he rarely showed his face in public. They said no woman had ever accepted his proposal before, until her sister, and now until her. The carriage rolled away from the station and into the mountains. Snow thickened. The road narrowed into a path carved between dark pines. Eleanor pressed her hand against the cold window glass. She was no longer Eleanor Whitmore. Tonight, she was Margaret. Her sister's name felt heavy on her tongue. 3 hours later, Blackwood Estate rose from the mountainside like a fortress carved from stone. It was not soft or welcoming. It was strong, severe, and silent. Gas lamps flickered along the long drive. The house stood wide and solid against the snow, its windows dark except for a faint glow in the upper floor. The carriage stopped. Mr. Grayson opened the door and extended his hand. "His Grace prefers to conduct the ceremony privately," he said. "He dislikes spectacle." Of course he does, Eleanor thought. She stepped down into the snow. It crunched beneath her boots like breaking glass. Inside, the air was warm but heavy. The entrance hall was vast, lined with dark wood and oil portraits of stern men with sharp eyes. But no flowers, no music, no guests, only silence. A woman in a black dress approached. Her posture was perfect, her expression unreadable. "I am Mrs. Callahan," she said. "The master is in the chapel." Chapel. Eleanor's heart pounded so hard she felt it in her throat. She was led down a long corridor, lit by oil lamps. Her wedding gown brushed against the polished floor. It had been Margaret's gown, altered quickly at the waist because Eleanor was thinner. The lace collar felt tight around her neck, as if already claiming her. The chapel doors opened. It was small and made of stone, with tall, narrow windows and rows of empty pews. At the front stood a minister, nervous and red-faced, and beside him stood the man she was about to marry. He was tall, taller than she expected, broad shoulders beneath a black formal coat, and his posture straight and unyielding. He did not turn when she entered. The minister cleared his throat. "We are gathered here. Begin," the man said. His voice was low and controlled, but it carried easily through the chapel. He turned. Eleanor forgot how to breathe. The left side of his face was covered by a black leather half-mask that stretched from his temple to his jaw. It was plain, severe, hiding whatever lay beneath. The visible side of his face was striking. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbone, a single gray eye that fixed on her with unsettling focus. He looked at her not with warmth, but with assessment. "You are not as tall as your portrait," he said. Her pulse stumbled. "The painter was generous," she replied softly, lowering her voice, trying to sound like Margaret, who had always been lighter, brighter. His eye narrowed slightly. The vowels passed in a blur. Eleanor repeated the words carefully. She did not trip over her sister's name. She did not faint. When he placed the ring on her finger, his hand was warm and steady. "By the authority vested in me," the minister said quickly, "I pronounce you husband and wife." There was no kiss, no smile. Jonathan Blackwood stepped back immediately. "Mrs. Callahan," he said, "show my wife to the East Wing. She is not to enter the West Wing without my permission." And then he walked out. Just like that. Eleanor stood alone at the altar, married to a stranger whose face she had barely seen. The East Wing bedroom was grand, but cold in spirit. A large four-poster bed, a fireplace already lit, heavy velvet curtains drawn tight against the snow. Mrs. Callahan paused at the door. "Dinner is at 8, she said. "His Grace does not enjoy chatter." The door closed. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her hands. Married, sold, trapped. At dinner, the table stretched so long it seemed meant for 20 guests. Only 2 chairs were occupied. He sat at one end, she at the other. He removed his gloves, but not his mask. They ate in silence for several minutes. The only sound was silver against porcelain. "The journey was difficult?" he asked finally. "Yes," she said. "The mountains are beautiful. Most people find them unforgiving. I do not," she replied, before she could stop herself. His fork paused midair. "You do not?" "I prefer honest danger to polite lies." The words slipped out before she could shape them into something softer, something more like Margaret. Silence followed, and his eye studied her carefully. "You are not what I was told to expect," he said. Her stomach tightened. "People are often misunderstood," she answered. He leaned back slightly. "Indeed." After dinner, he stood. "I work late," he said. "You will not wander." "I am not a child," she replied quietly. For a moment, something almost like surprise flickered in his gaze. "No," he said slowly, "you are not." He left her alone again. That night, sleep would not come. The wind struck the windows like restless fingers. The estate creaked with the sound of settling timber. Around midnight, Eleanor heard something that did not belong to wind or wood. A steady metallic rhythm. Click. Pause. Click. Click. Her breath caught. It came from somewhere below her room. Curiosity battled fear. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and slipped into the corridor, carrying a small oil lamp. The sound grew louder as she moved toward the West Wing. The Forbidden Wing. A door stood slightly open. Light spilled through the narrow gap. She stepped closer. Inside, Jonathan Blackwood stood at a wide desk covered in maps. He was not wearing the mask. Eleanor leaned forward. There was a scar, yes, a thin, pale line across his temple. But it was not monstrous, not the horror whispered about in society columns. He was not hideous. He was devastatingly handsome, hard, intense, alive. Across from him stood a man in a military coat. "The governor arrives in Cheyenne on Thursday," Jonathan said in a voice sharper than before, commanding. "The attempt will happen at the rail yard. We intercept before the signal is given." "Yes, Your Grace," the soldier replied. Eleanor's heart slammed. "Your Grace," the soldier continued. "If Washington learns that the Duke of Ravenhurst survived the border massacre, they will demand your return." "The Duke of Ravenhurst is dead," Jonathan said coldly. "He died 3 years ago. I am Jonathan Blackwood." The lamp in Eleanor's hand trembled. The Duke of Ravenhurst, a European noble who had vanished during an overseas conflict, a man rumored to have secret alliances with American industrial powers, and a man thought buried in a foreign grave. She shifted her weight slightly. The floorboard creaked. Jonathan's head snapped toward the door. In one swift motion, he drew a revolver and aimed straight at her. "Step into the light," he commanded. Her heart pounded so hard, she thought it might stop. Slowly, Eleanor pushed the door open and stepped inside. He stared at her. The soldier reached for his own weapon. "Margaret," Jonathan said carefully. She swallowed. "My name," she whispered, "is Eleanor." The room went silent. The revolver lowered just slightly. "Explain," he said. And Eleanor knew that the lie that had brought her here was about to explode into something far more dangerous than a political marriage. She lifted her chin. "My sister ran away," she said. I came in her place." Jonathan Blackwood's gray eye hardened. "So," he said slowly, "I have married the wrong woman." And somewhere deep inside Eleanor, fear turned into something else. Because she had not only married a stranger, she had married a man the world believed to be dead. The revolver did not lower all the way. Jonathan Blackwood stood perfectly still, his gray eye locked on Eleanor, as if he were measuring the truth in her pulse. "You have one chance," he said. "Speak carefully." The soldier beside him shifted, but did not interrupt. Eleanor kept her hands where he could see them. She forced herself not to tremble. "My sister left 2 hours before we boarded the train," she said. "She ran away with a man from Denver. My father could not break the agreement with you. The rail contract would have collapsed. So, he sent me." "You expect me to believe you volunteered for this?" "Yes." The word came out steady. Jonathan's gaze sharpened. "Why?" "Because someone had to." Silence filled the study. The fire crackled. Snow tapped against the tall windows. Finally, he lowered the revolver completely. "Thomas," he said to the soldier, "leave us." The man hesitated. "Your Grace, leave." When the door shut, the room felt smaller. Jonathan set the revolver on the desk, but did not step away from it. "You deceived me," he said. "My father deceived you," she corrected softly. "I told the truth the moment I saw yours." His jaw tightened. "You should be terrified." "I was," she said, "until I realized you are not the monster they describe." A flicker crossed his face. "And what do they describe?" "A butcher, a recluse, and a scarred beast hiding in the mountains. And what do you see?" Eleanor looked at him fully now. "I see a man preparing to stop an assassination." His expression changed. Not anger, not softness. Recognition. "You heard enough to make yourself dangerous," he said. "I hear patterns," she replied, "and I notice details. The governor's route, the rail yard, the timing. He studied her for a long moment. "You are not Margaret," he murmured. "Margaret Whitmore was described to me as charming and delicate." "My sister enjoys parties," Eleanor said. "I enjoy books." The corner of his mouth moved slightly. "God help me," he muttered. He walked around the desk, closer now. Without the mask, he seemed younger. The scar at his temple caught the firelight, but did not weaken him. It made him look real. "You understand what you have stepped into?" he asked. "I married you," she said quietly. "I believe that answers the question." He stopped in front of her. "The Duke of Ravenhurst died publicly 3 years ago," he said. "That death allowed me to move freely, without political chains, without foreign eyes watching my steps." "And now?" she asked. "Now I operate as Jonathan Blackwood, a private landowner, a quiet investor, a man no one fears enough to monitor, but someone is trying to kill the governor. Yes. And you intend to stop it? Yes. Then why hide?" His voice hardened. "Because the men behind this do not fear governors. They fear the Duke." The truth settled heavy between them. "You married into a war," he said. She lifted her chin. "I have been living in one my entire life, and it just looked like dinner parties." For the first time, he almost smiled. Almost. "You cannot leave now," he said. "You know too much." "I did not plan to leave." "That would be wise." He walked to the sideboard and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to her. She hesitated only a second before taking it. "To unwanted marriages," he said dryly. She met his gaze. "To inconvenient truths." They drank. The warmth steadied her nerves. "What happens next?" she asked. He set the glass down. "Next, we pretend nothing is wrong." "That may be difficult," she said. "You aimed a revolver at me." "You walked into a secure war room," he replied. "Fair." He moved back to the desk and spread out the map. "The governor arrives in Cheyenne in 2 days," he said. "The attack will occur during the speech at the rail yard. Large crowd, confusion, easy escape. And you will intercept the attacker." "Yes." "How?" He looked at her carefully. "You are asking to be involved." "I am already involved." "You could stay here." "And wait?" she asked. "While you risk exposure?" He did not answer. She stepped closer to the desk. Her shoulder nearly brushed his. "Your men expect you to be alone," she said. "No wife, no distractions. They expect Margaret. And instead, they have me." He looked down at her. "Yes, they do." A quiet tension built between them. Not fear this time. Something sharper. Awareness. "You cannot attend the governor's speech openly," she said. "If someone recognizes you, they will not. Unless they do." He exhaled slowly. "What are you suggesting?" "I attend." His head snapped toward her. Absolutely not." "Why?" "Because it is dangerous. So is being married to you." He stepped closer. "This is not a debate, Eleanor." "Then what is it?" she shot back. "You need someone who can move unnoticed, someone people will underestimate, someone they will not suspect." His silence answered her. "You need a politician's daughter," she said quietly. "Not a duke." The truth of it hung between them. "You have courage," he said after a moment. "But courage is not strategy." "Then teach me." He stared at her. "You would learn?" "Yes." "You understand that if something goes wrong, it already has," she said softly. "My sister ran away. My father sold me. I married a man the world believes is dead. I am past worrying about comfort." The words were simple, but they were true. He reached out suddenly and brushed his thumb against her cheek, as if testing whether she would flinch. She did not. "You are nothing like the woman I agreed to marry," he murmured. "Is that disappointment?" "No," he said quietly. "It is a complication." They stood too close now. The air felt heavy, charged. A knock broke the moment. Thomas stepped in without waiting for permission. "Your Grace, riders from Denver have arrived." Jonathan's expression changed instantly. Controlled. Cold. "Who?" "Senator Whitmore." Eleanor's stomach dropped. "My father?" "Yes, ma'am." Jonathan looked at her. "Does he know you told me?" "No." "Good." He replaced the mask swiftly, fastening it into place. In seconds, the fierce man before her became the distant Blackwood again. "Stay beside me," he said. They walked to the grand entry hall together. Her father stood near the fireplace, snow melting off his boots. His face was pale with worry. "Margaret," he began automatically. "It's Eleanor," she said firmly. He froze. Jonathan stepped forward. "Senator Whitmore," he said coolly. "You owe me an explanation." Her father swallowed. "My daughter panicked," he said. "She did not understand the importance of the alliance." "And so you replaced her like a damaged shipment?" Jonathan asked. The words were calm but sharp. "It was necessary," the senator insisted. The rail expansion depends on your land access." "And you assumed I would not notice." "Jolanta." Eleanor stepped forward. "I told him," she said. "The moment I arrived." Her father's eyes widened. "You what?" "I will not live inside a lie," she said. Jonathan looked at her, then back at the senator. "Your daughter is honest," he said. "A rare quality in politics." The senator shifted uneasily. "You intend to keep her?" he asked carefully. Jonathan's gloved hand settled lightly at Eleanor's back. "Yes," he said. The single word echoed. Eleanor's breath caught. Her father looked between them, confused. "Then the alliance stands." "For now," Jonathan replied. "But understand this, Senator. If I discover another deception, our arrangement will end permanently." The warning was clear. Her father nodded quickly. "Well, of course." When he finally left, the doors closing behind him, the hall grew quiet again. Eleanor turned slowly toward her husband. "You did not have to defend me," she said. "I did not defend you," he replied. "I defended my interests." She raised an eyebrow. "And I am your interest?" He looked down at her, the gray eye unreadable behind the mask. "You are my wife," he said, "which makes you my responsibility." The words should have felt cold. Instead, they felt steady. "Then teach me," she said softly. "If I am to stand beside you, I will not do it blindly." He held her gaze for a long moment. "Very well," he said at last. "Tomorrow at dawn, we ride." "To Cheyenne?" "Yes." "And if we fail?" His hand tightened slightly at her back. "And we will not fail." But as the wind howled across the mountains and the lamps flickered against the stone walls, Eleanor felt the weight of something larger moving toward them. The governor. The rail yard. The hidden enemies who believed the Duke of Ravenhurst was dead. And the truth that if anyone discovered he was alive, it would not just be a political scandal. It would be war. Eleanor Whitmore had been forced into a marriage she did not choose. But now, as she stood in the shadow of a man the world had buried, she understood something clearly. She was no longer just replacing her sister. She was stepping into history, and history was about to fight back. Dawn broke cold and sharp over the Rockies. Eleanor had never ridden so hard in her life. At the trail to Cheyenne cut through frozen valleys and narrow ridges, where one wrong step meant a deadly fall. Jonathan rode ahead of her, straight-backed and silent, his black coat snapping in the wind. Even with the mask secured to his face, he did not look like a recluse. He looked like a commander riding toward battle. Thomas and 2 other men followed at a distance. They reached Cheyenne just after noon. The town buzzed with excitement. Banners hung across the main street. Vendors shouted. The rail yard had been cleared for the governor's speech. A wooden platform stood near the tracks, draped in flags. Music played. Children laughed. It looked harmless. It was not. Jonathan guided Eleanor into a quiet alley beside a warehouse overlooking the rail yard. "Remember," he said, fastening his gloves, "what you are here as Senator Whitmore's daughter. Curious, proud, visible." "And you?" she asked. "I am no one." He removed the mask and handed it to Thomas. For a moment she stared at his bare face. The scar at his temple caught the light. It no longer looked like something to hide. It looked like a mark of survival. "You will be close enough to see me," he said quietly. "If something shifts, you move first. Do not wait for my signal." Her heart pounded. "You trust me? I would not have brought you otherwise." They parted. Eleanor stepped into the crowd. The rail yard smelled of smoke and metal. Men in suits gathered near the platform. Ladies held parasols against the pale sun. Soldiers stood at careful intervals. She forced her breathing steady. "Watch the edges," she reminded herself. But Jonathan had told her the attack would not come from the obvious place. It would come from someone overlooked. The governor arrived to loud applause. He climbed the platform and began speaking about expansion, prosperity, unity. Eleanor scanned the crowd. A newspaper boy moved too slowly near the crates by the tracks. A man in a railway uniform kept glancing toward the telegraph office. But it was the woman near the platform who caught her eye. She stood very still. Too still. Dressed plainly in gray. One hand hidden inside her coat. Eleanor's pulse spiked. The woman's gaze was fixed not on the governor, but on the signal tower behind him. A diversion. Eleanor turned her head slightly. On the opposite side of the yard, she saw Jonathan moving through the workers near the telegraph office. His eyes followed the same woman, but he saw it too. The governor raised his hand dramatically. "Together we build the future." The woman in gray moved. Her hidden hand came out holding a small metal device wired tightly around a handle. A detonator. Eleanor did not think. She shoved through the crowd. "Stop!" she shouted. People turned in confusion. The woman's eyes widened. She lunged toward the base of the platform. Eleanor threw herself forward and collided with her. They crashed into the dirt. The detonator skidded across the ground. A gunshot cracked. Not from the woman. From the telegraph office. Jonathan had drawn his revolver and fired at a man attempting to ignite a second charge near the signal tower. The crowd erupted into chaos. Screams, smoke, horses rearing. The woman beneath Eleanor struggled fiercely. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "You chose this." Eleanor shot back, gripping her wrist. The woman reached for a hidden knife. Before she could strike, Jonathan appeared beside them and kicked the blade away. He grabbed the woman and pinned her face down in the dirt. "Where is the third charge?" he demanded. She laughed bitterly. "Too late." Jonathan's head snapped toward the rail car behind the platform. Eleanor followed his gaze. A freight car door stood slightly open. Inside, something glinted. Without hesitation, Jonathan ran. Eleanor scrambled to her feet and followed. He leaped into the rail car and ripped open a wooden crate. Inside lay sticks of dynamite wired together. The fuse was lit. Flame burned down the line. There was no time to dismantle it carefully. Jonathan grabbed the crate. "Clear the yard!" he shouted. He hurled the crate out of the car and toward an empty stretch beyond the tracks. Eleanor grabbed his arm and dragged him down behind a stack of timber. The explosion tore through the air seconds later. The ground shook, wood splintered, smoke swallowed the rail yard. For a moment, there was nothing but ringing silence. Then coughing, shouting. No massive casualties, no destroyed platform. The blast had been forced away from the crowd. Jonathan rose slowly, pulling Eleanor up with him. "You disobeyed my instruction," he said roughly. "You said move first," she replied, breathless. He looked at her, and something fierce and proud burned in his eyes. Soldiers rushed in. The woman in gray and the wounded man from the telegraph office were seized. The governor, shaken but alive, descended the platform surrounded by guards. He stared at Jonathan. "I know that face," he said quietly. Jonathan stiffened. "You should not," he replied evenly. The governor stepped closer. Ravenhurst. The name fell like a stone. Several nearby men went silent. Eleanor felt the shift immediately. The world believed the Duke dead. Jonathan met the governor's gaze without flinching. "The Duke died overseas," he said calmly. "I am Jonathan Blackwood." The governor studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Then, Mr. Blackwood," he said carefully, "you have my gratitude." He extended his hand. Jonathan hesitated only a second before shaking it. The moment passed. But Eleanor understood something important. The truth was fragile, and now it was close to breaking. That evening, back at Blackwood Estate, the wind howled once more around the stone walls. Jonathan stood in the study, staring at the fire. "You exposed yourself," Eleanor said gently. "I calculated the risk. The governor recognized you." He chose silence. For now. He turned toward her. "Are you afraid?" "Yes," she admitted. "Of me?" "No." He crossed the room slowly. "Then of what?" "That one day the world will demand you return to being a duke." His gaze softened. "And if it does? Will you leave this life?" she asked quietly. "Leave the mountains?" He stepped closer until only inches separated them. "I did not survive war to return to a gilded cage," he said. "And me?" she asked. "You," he said, reaching up to brush a loose strand of hair from her face, "are the only reason I would ever consider stepping into light again." Her breath caught. "You once told me I was your responsibility," she said softly. "I was wrong." He slid his hand to her waist. "You are my equal." The words settled between them like a vow stronger than the one spoken in the chapel. "I did not marry Margaret," he continued. "I married Eleanor, and I would choose you again." Emotion rose sharp in her chest. "I was sent here as a replacement," she whispered. "You were never a replacement," he said firmly. "You were the woman I needed." He leaned down and kissed her. Not hurried, not desperate, certain. Outside, the mountains stood silent and strong against the night. The assassination plot had failed. The governor lived. The Rail Alliance remained intact. But more than that, something else had survived. A forced marriage had become a partnership. A hidden duke had found a woman unafraid of his shadows. And Eleanor Whitmore, once the quiet sister sent in another's place, had stepped into her own power. The world might still believe the Duke of Ravenhurst was dead. But in the mountains of Colorado, beside a woman who refused to stand behind him, he was very much alive. And this time, he was not fighting alone.